Cool. All right. Let's get this party started. Hey, everybody. Thank you guys for coming. This is exciting. Innovation Days is always a really fun time to be here at Marriott. My name is Bryce Barand. I work in the Customer Experience Innovation team, and we get to do all sorts of really fun stuff, and you're going to get to see a little bit of that today. So just out of curiosity, the session abstract obviously got some of you guys here, which is exciting. So how many of you guys are actually working or doing stuff with artificial intelligence right now in your kind of day-to-day job? Okay. How many of you guys, this is like you know a lot about AI, and this is like you know nothing about AI? Give me a sense, like put your hands up about, and if you like know absolutely nothing, then just like kind of tilt your shoulder down a little bit. Okay, cool. This session is probably going to be the completely wrong level for everyone. This is going to be way too technical. I'm kidding. No, this should be good. We're going to go over kind of some of the basic stuff, and we're going to talk about what's going on out there in the industry, and then also what are some of the kind of fun and exciting stuff that Marriott's doing with AI. So let's see if this guy works. All right, so here's kind of the stuff we're going to go over. We're going to start this is the handshake, us getting to know AI, and then we're going to see what kind of stuff AI does, like Wall-E being productive, making his trash cubes, and seeing some of the stuff Marriott's done. And then we're going to end where every good AI presentation should end, which is on robots taking over the world and killing us all. So with that, let's get started. So AI stands for artificial intelligence. So there's actually some chatter out there that it's not really artificial and it's not really intelligence, and it should be called automated insights instead, which is kind of interesting because really those are the things that AI does really well, is helping you with your insights. And so we'll dive a little bit more into that. So here's kind of the traditional definition, is the capability of a machine to imitate human behavior. And there's some stuff that it tries to tackle, like knowledge, reasoning, problem solving, perception, learning, planning, and the ability to manipulate and move objects. And so you're going to hear a couple of terms in this talk, and you know when you listen to the news, you'll hear things like machine learning and deep learning. How many of you guys have heard those phrases before? Probably most everyone. How many of you feel like you really understand the difference between artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning? So here's kind of how it breaks down by the most common definitions, is that you have artificial intelligence, which is kind of like the summary of the practice of trying to imitate human behavior, human thought process. And then machine learning is one approach to doing artificial intelligence. Machine learning is where you are given the machine kind of specific instructions, like I will teach you how to do certain tasks, and then you can then replicate or do those. Deep learning is a really kind of more advanced subset of machine learning, where instead of you giving the specific kind of recipes to the machine, you're kind of teaching the machine to teach itself. And that's why it's called deep, is because you're using a much larger data set, and it's kind of coming up with its own conclusions, which is a little bit more of a black box to the end users. So I'll give you a quick example of this. So let's say you had a large data set of cats, and you needed a program that could recognize cats. Really important task. With machine learning, you would be telling the computer, basically, this is an ear, this is a tail, these are whiskers, this is what fur looks like. And when you see all these things, there's a good chance that it's a cat, and then that would help the machine go out and identify cats. With deep learning, instead, all you're doing is giving it a huge data set and saying, all these images are cats. And then you as the machine have got to figure out, well, what did it come with? What made it a cat? So it comes up with kind of its own conclusions. And there's different subsets in times when machine learning is good for some type of problems, and then deep learning is right for other kinds of problems. But that's kind of at a high level what they are. So another term that you're going to hear a lot when you're talking about artificial intelligence is a model. And you'll hear a lot about, okay, we trained the model or didn't train the model. And so I thought it'd be good to kind of explain what an artificial intelligence model is. And so I'm going to give you an example. This is my family. And we, like most families, we have to eat. We eat dinner. And my wife is the one who generally does the cooking for our family. So there's a model that exists for how to figure out like the right types of food or dinner to make. And so there's a couple of inputs to that model. For example, my son Sam in the red, he hates cheese. He always peels it off his pizza or whatever has cheese in it. He's going to remove it. Emmy, my daughter, she really likes finger foods because she's still 3 and she's not really talented with a fork yet. My son Lucas, he eats anything. He's like a garbage disposal. And I think raw onions are evil. So these are the different inputs to the model. My wife could come up with, like a really specific set of instructions for each day this is the food that we're gonna make. But a model needs to evolve over time, right? So some of our tastes are gonna evolve, and then sometimes it's like the schedule for like soccer practice is gonna impact what we do for dinner if we've got to do something fast or get something on the way. And all of these inputs, if you tried to represent that with a computer problem, or if you tried to represent that with software, it would actually be pretty hard to represent that. So this next slide shows kind of how you would do that traditionally. Is you would have like 100 days and you would program out, okay, on day 1, eat this, on day 2, eat this, on day 3, eat this. And that's a traditional kind of programming model and solution. Now with machine learning, what you do is you take all those inputs and you try and craft something that's intelligent, that's able to say, hey, I think this will be a good recipe to try it. And then here's the kind of the key part, is you try it, and then if we were doing this successfully with software, we'd have little buttons around the table that each person could tap the button, say they liked it or they didn't like it, or how much they liked it, or why they didn't like it. So as you can see, the model is really critical. Model is like a representation of something that's in the real world that the machine has then got to try and duplicate. So coming back to our cat example, the model of a cat is actually a cat itself, right? And that's the representation of the thing in the real world. So that makes sense. Now we've covered machine learning, we've covered deep learning, we've covered modeling. So let's go ahead and talk about, like, where does that put us in the timeline of artificial intelligence? So the things that artificial intelligence can do kind of actually pretty well right now are really kind of narrow, task-specific things. For example, we'll talk a little bit later about how we're using artificial intelligence to come up with pricing for hotels. And so in a really kind of defined scope, artificial intelligence does really well at that. In the future, then it could tackle multiple present problems. Instead of just one problem, it could be a little bit more broad, and that would put it basically on the human level of intelligence. And then we get to the fun stuff, when the robots are just a lot smarter than we are. How many of you guys think that this is like reality or science fiction? Raise your hand if you think it's reality, like this is an actual thing, like the singularity is real and it could kill us all. How many of you are like, no, that's just science fiction. I'm sure that would never, ever happen.
Not in my lifetime.
Not in your lifetime, at least not, that's not the hope. So I was listening to a TED Talk that was talking about this, and what kind of brought it home for me is a limitation of biology. So the computation power of our brains is limited by how our cells work and the storage capacity in our brains and how much we could actually keep and kind of hold in memory and able to process. We're not going to get much better or faster or be able to remember much more than we do today, right? Unless we did some like really serious genetic modification. Let's take that out of it. Now, with machines, the capabilities of storage processing are going to grow and continue to grow. If you look at Moore's law of doubling every 2 years, is that those capabilities will get stronger. So there will be a time coming up when it happens, we don't know. But absolutely, the machines, just based on our limitations, machines will have more capabilities than we do. Are they going to be good at everything and better than us at everything? No, definitely not at first. But we should be at least a little bit afraid. So let's bring it back to the current and talk about some of the problems that we have and why artificial intelligence really helps us. So data in general, you guys have kind of heard some of the phrase, maybe you've heard this or not, but there's phrases in the industry like data is the new gold. And that the more data you have, the more power, understanding, and capabilities your company has. So who are the most powerful companies right now on the planet? Google, Amazon, Facebook. And why are these companies so powerful? And it's really because they have so much of our data, and they know so much about us. And that data is really kind of the leverage. Now, when you think about that kind of like scale and size of data, is that pretty soon it gets to a point where it's just way beyond our capabilities to interpret and to make any type of reasoning out of. For example, you guys are familiar with beacons, like the beacons we have on some of our properties. So just a really quick intro on how beacons work. So a beacon, all it is it's like a signal. It's just a digital signal that's like, you program it to a location, so like say the lobby. So you have a beacon that just says, I'm the lobby, I'm the lobby, I'm the lobby. And then you have another one that's in like the pool, and it says, I'm the pool, I'm the pool, I'm the pool. That's all they do. And then your phone walks in, and your phone is listening for those beacons. And if it hears I'm the lobby, then like something like the Marriott app will say, oh, I'm in the lobby. I'm this user because I'm signed in this app. I'll go and tell the server that I just walked into the lobby, and then I walk in the pool, and it hears that beacon saying, I'm in the pool, I'm in the pool. And so now it knows I was at the pool and how long I spent at the pool. So that's how beacons work. So we actually have beacons installed in quite a few of our properties today, and there's stuff that we're starting to do with those capabilities. So just some back of the envelope math that I did the other day. So let's say, let be conservative speaking, only 100 guests on each property have the app installed. So we obviously have larger capacity to our rooms. Let's just say 100 guests per property have the app. We have 6,000 properties. And let's say, also conservatively speaking, we have 6 beacons. So maybe 1 or 2 in the lobby, in the pool, in the fitness center. Let's say we only have 6. And then 12 events. This is extremely conservative because you're going to walk in and you're going to trip multiple beacons multiple times per day. Even if you just walk straight up to your room and then right back out, you're probably going to trip multiple beacons. So that gets to 65 million data points per day. So let's say your boss comes to you and says, what are people doing on property? And you're like, I got a solution. I know what we're doing on property because I've been collecting all these beacon events. And he says, great, well, tell me about it. Now, if you looked at a log of those 65 million events for one day, what kind of analysis would you be able to give your boss? You really wouldn't be able to do anything. So this is like kind of a key and prime example of where the data that we're collecting, there's just no way that we are capable of processing that much information. So what does this mean for us? Let me move this out of the way. Let's talk about like some of those kind of cool things that now we've kind of got a base of it. Let's talk about some of those cool things that it can do. So really AI is having huge impacts all across industries. Some of the ones I'll call out is the stuff in travel and hospitality. So scheduling aircraft, dynamic pricing, social media consumer feedback and interaction analysis. Think about all the mentions and talk on social media. There's just no way a person can get in there and look at all that. Customer complaint resolution, traffic patterns, and congestion management. So there's lots of fun stuff happening in travel, but there's fun stuff happening kind of all over the place. Some of the stuff that I've learned about recently that I really like is in fraud management, and that if you have, like credit cards are a really good example. So if you have, millions of credit card holders and they're creating multiple events a day. As soon as you get someone who's starting to create some type of abnormalities, so if they're having credit card in like multiple locations around the world, or if it's like extremely high amounts, then AI is going to help us look at those things to flag something as potentially for fraudulent or inappropriate. So let's look at, let's go deep dive on some kind of really cool examples. So the first one is, comes from Google Photos. How many of you guys use Google Photos, the product from Google? So as you guys know, most of you have probably seen something like this. I'm going to show you something that Google Photos, their AI did for me. So let me back up and say one thing before I show you this really personal video, is that some of the things that I love about AI is to take something that's very impersonal, which is large amounts of data, and to bring it into something that's very personal and touching and kind of like emotional or feeling oriented. So I've been taking pictures with my Android phone for a couple of years. And obviously over the years my kids have grown older. I don't have the time, or the desire may be there, but I don't have the time to go back and create like any cute collages of my kids over the years, right? But Google, with their AI does, so I'm going to show you this little video. Try not to cry.
Chewie made his cat.
And it goes just kind of like this is a as they grow, or like watch my kids grow up video.
Say what? Sam?
We're gonna test how good my Hey, ask what?
Mimi Abraham.
Hey! You have jumps?
Jump. Yep. I'll stop there. So you guys get the idea. But basically, like, this is like really cool to me. So I sent this to my wife and I was like, oh, look at this. Look at how cute our kids are. And she wrote me back. She's like, these videos always make me cry. And so this is like a really perfect example of taking something that I'm not capable of doing and making something that really actually impacts me for the better. So the next one I want to show you guys is another example of a different Google product. This came out at Google I/O, which was a couple months ago. And they're putting a lot of work into the Google Assistant and this idea that the Assistant can help you do all sorts of tasks. And there's one in particular that really stood out to me as a pretty amazing use case and time saver and just really, really kind of creepy. Has anyone seen this one? Yeah. All right. So we're going to play this video of the use case is someone needs to make a hair appointment, but that's a pain. It takes time out of someone's schedule to set that hair appointment. So we're going to see how AI could help a person set a hair appointment.
Makes the call seamlessly in the background for you.
See, the request is make me a hair
So what you're going
appointment
to
on
hear
Tuesdays between 10 and
is the
12.
Google Assistant actually calling a real salon to schedule the appointment for you. Let's listen.
So how can I help you? Hi, I'm calling to book a woman's haircut for a client. I'm looking for something on May 3rd. Sure, give me 1 second. Mm-hmm. Sure, what time are you looking for around? At 12 p.m. We do not have a 12 p.m. available. The closest we have to that is a 1:15. Do you have anything between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m.? Depending on what service she would like. What service is she looking for? Just a woman's haircut for now. Okay, we have at 10 o'clock. 10 a.m. is fine. Okay, what's her first name? Her first name is Lisa. Okay, perfect. So I will see Lisa at 10 o'clock on May 3rd.
Cool. So what were some of the cool things you guys noticed in this? It said mm-hmm and to try to imitate a real person. Did you get any sense that the hair salon thought it was just AI? No. So yes, that's true. They did. Some of the other things I liked was like the going back. Okay, you didn't have something at 12 p.m. Kind of going back and asking for it again. Now this is a pretty happy path scenario, right? This one was pretty straightforward. So we're going to skip ahead a little bit and do one that's really kind of gnarly. Let's see.
See how may I hear you?
Hi, I'd like to reserve a table for Wednesday the 7th.
For 7 people?
It's for 4 people.
4 people? When? Today?
Next
Tonight?
Wednesday at 6 p.m.
Oh, actually we reserve for like upper like 5 people. For 4 people you can come.
How long is the wait usually to be seated?
So, when tomorrow or weekday or?
For next Wednesday, the 7th.
Oh no, it's not too busy. You can come for 4 people, okay?
Oh, I gotcha. Thanks.
Bye bye.
All right. So what was incredible about that one? What did you guys notice? It understood her, which was kind of hard because the connection wasn't great. She had an accent. What else? Yes, the alternate solution in that she misunderstood him. He said the 7th. She thought she meant 7 people. And it knew to correct her and say, no, just 4 people. And then that whole exchange where she was saying, no, you only need reservations of up to 7. I was surprised that it got it because I didn't quite get it. I had to kind of think about it. So anyway, this is really, really amazing stuff that Google is doing. And we're going to talk about in a little bit like some of the things that companies like Google are doing to make themselves like really kind of jump out against the crowd in this space. Let me jump out of this real fast. Okay. All right. Okay. So that was kind of a fun, like Google Assistant adventure where it helps you do a task. Here's another example where it's like a real kind of business case and how AI can help in a space where like I wouldn't even guess that AI was like a good fit for. So let's jump in.
This is my dairy farm on the island of Texel in the Netherlands. Dairy farming is hard. It's a lot of work, and you're working with live animals. There's a lot of uncertainty. Things can change within a day. You just have to be really focused and keep track of it all. The cow's health is of the utmost importance. A sick cow is not producing milk, and she will also require more attention. That's why we adopt the technology. We're searching for things that can help us out. And artificial intelligence can be a great tool to give farmers more insight. The app of IDA helps me to keep track of my cows, so it makes life easier.
IDA is really the dairy farmer's assistant. It starts by a sensor that sits on the neck of a cow. And by analyzing the movement of this sensor, we use TensorFlow and machine learning to figure out what the cow is doing. And we can actually distinguish multiple behaviors of this cow: eating, ruminating, drinking, standing, laying, and walking. So if IDA sees a certain pattern in the behavior, IDA can actually figure out the disease that the cow is prone to get, and she can warn the farmer to take care of her.
The key thing with IDA is that it learns. Using TensorFlow, an open source tool that Google has authored, it learns the behavior of animals, and it gets better over time.
That helps me to improve the efficiency of my milk production and also improve animal welfare to keep the cows healthy and comfortable.
We see farming as evolving. Technology and the farmer are going to work together.
Okay. So what did you guys notice about that one? I thought it was cool that it's using learning to figure out the different states of the cow. So the standing and eating and moving, and really kind of flagging abnormalities or anything that looks like out of the norm. And then, so the farmer could take action really quickly. And so this one doesn't go into the business case and like how this actually affected milk production. But I'm sure if you can keep your cows, sick 20% less of the time, and can keep them like, if this leads to any changes in their diet or behavior, like this could have a really, really big impact on productivity. So I love this one because it's like a totally wild difference. So now we've done the fun stuff, which is great. So now we can talk about some of the naysayers or people that are kind of afraid of some of the things that AI can do. So starting with positive, Jeff Bezos, obviously Amazon, they're very bullish on AI. In Google, very bullish on AI. Stephen Hawking, he was worried about AI. So he was saying stuff like, the development of full artificial intelligence could spell the end of the human race. It would never take off on its own and redesign itself at it would take off on its own and redesign itself at an ever-increasing rate. Humans who are limited by slow biological evolution couldn't compete and will be superseded. And Elon Musk, he's very afraid of it also. So he's really been pushing for, how do we have governance and how do we set up the ethics around AI? And there's a lot to this. And so we're actually going to talk about that in a little bit on some of the ethical problems of AI, and when you try and operate on efficiency, sometimes ethics can kind of get thrown out the window. So this is a slide that just shows really how a lot of industries that are tackling this are seeing really huge gains. So if you look at this orange line of these are the impacts to bottom line. And the people that are putting a lot into AI are seeing really big returns, as you can imagine with that cow example. And then look who's at the very bottom. Travel and tourism. So what does this mean for us? This means that right now this is a sector that has a very green field opportunity. And that if we, as Marriott, have this opportunity to step in here, and if we invest in a smart way in AI, we could see our profits jump, and it could give us a chance to do some leapfrogging. Some of the business line, bottom line inputs that I thought were interesting was Amazon spent a ton of money on a robotics company that will help moving things in the warehouse to get from shelves to ready to ship. And they said that operating costs fell an estimated 20%, giving a return close to 40% on the original investment. So imagine 20% for Amazon, what kind of impact that is. Netflix, I thought this one was really interesting, is that if it took longer than 90 seconds to find your next show, that basically you weren't going to watch something else. So by just optimizing the search results and saying, hey, I know that you like to watch, scary movies with axes and blood and dismembered parts. And I think that you'll like this other show, and you may even like this other show. And if I can give that content to you really fast and get you to keep watching, it's going to keep your subscription up, basically. So they're estimating that avoiding those canceled subscriptions it's a difference of $1 billion annually. So it's really, really kind of huge. So there's lots of opportunities in all aspects of the business. So let's look at some of the things that people are doing. So if you look at some of the stuff up top, it's where do we have opportunities to grow? Is it in operations? Is it in product development, supply chain management? And another one for us where we're showing up at the bottom, where we're green space, it's underinvested right now. So let's look at these leaders and what they're doing organizational-wise. So each of them are doing, each of these Google, Microsoft, and Facebook, who are some of the leaders, are setting up strict AI center of excellences in their companies, and they're even having chief of AI and the structure kind of from the ground up. They're building their enterprises around artificial intelligence. Each of these, I found examples of how they're doing AI training. So they have these courses that they offer for free, where they're trying to get each employee to understand more of it. They have AI services infrastructure. So Google has a product that you heard when we saw that cow example called TensorFlow, which is mechanisms and tools for doing some of that deep learning and machine learning. And they're not only dog fooding and eating those and creating and using their own tools, but those are products that they're selling to other people. Microsoft is the same thing. Facebook doesn't have AI infrastructures that they're selling. And then AI applications, so they're just building, all their applications are moving to AI. Something that Pai Sundar, who's the CEO of Google, said that was interesting is they used to say that we're a mobile-first company. That was what they would talk about every time that they would get out and talk. And now they're saying we're AI first. Everything we do is AI first. So obviously it's going to have really huge impacts on where it takes them. So when you apply it to the hospitality space, here's some of the kind of basic or the entries into AI. So you have chatbots, natural language search, robot concierges, robot butlers, voice assistants in rooms. And you can see that pretty much everyone's starting to do this chatbot. How many of you guys have interacted with our chatbots? We have a couple of them. We have a rewards chatbot, then we have a talent chatbot. Anyone? So actually you worked on them, didn't you? Yeah, that's right. So we have a couple of things that we did. Our team in CX Innovation, we worked on a chatbot for a property in Boston, which I'll show you guys in a little bit. So everyone's kind of starting to do this. We're starting to get to this language search, but as you can see, there's a lot of space on this board for things to grow and for us to do new things. Here's some of the stuff where when we look at what are those opportunities for Marriott, what are things that we could do. So the pricing and sorting, there's really a lot of space there. We're doing some. We have a lot more to go on that. Recommendations, selfie for check-in, image rank, target marketing, and security. So we're doing a little bit of this, and we have opportunity to grow a lot. So we're going to dive into some demos right now. So the first one I'm going to show you guys is the Alibaba one for Express check-in. How many of you guys have seen this Alibaba like facial recognition check-in? So this is kind of cool. So in the app, they select a room, and that's where we're going to pick it up. So this is awesome. This is something we've heard from lots and lots of guest researchers. How can you do this? So like, I don't need to check in at the desk. If you can know who I am, just let me go straight to my room. So that one's a really, really cool project that's going on right now. I'm going to show you guys.
I gotta be honest with you. Grocery shopping used to be one of my least favorite.
All right, so I'm going to show you guys something that we worked on, which is the chatbot for the bottler in Boston. So what this chatbot is the way it works is as you show up on property, the front desk will say, hey, do you want to participate in this program we have? We have this new trainee, his name is Bottler, and he's here to help you out with like any kind of like questions that you have, and instead of calling the front desk, you can ask the Bottler. And I can kind of like breeze through and show you some of the interactions. Is that you get this kind of cute little image that gives a personality to the AI and says, hey, I'm the Bottler and I can help you with lots of stuff. You know, what do you want? Do you want item requests or wake-up calls, hotel info? You can say things like, hey, once the pool is open, and it'll give you back, oh, Splash is just off the first floor, and it's open from this time to this time. And then we're also trying to get them to go by the Refuel, which is Aloft's, like their little store to get. And so we're trying to upsell the store after your dip and grab a snack. Can I get 2 pillows? Yes. And then check out this like fun little image. So we did this Bottler POC a couple months ago, and the results were really great. People loved it. People were really excited about it. And in fact, we had, after our customer experience, after our innovation group was kind of done, we're like, hey, it's time for us to move on. The property said, hey, great, you guys can move on, but can we keep this chatbot up and running because people really like it? And we did. So it's actually still running today. I still every once in a while go in and check, and there's still requests coming in for people asking for towels and pillows and that kind of thing. So that one's pretty cool. I'm also going to show you something that we did for. Oh, I showed these demos already. I'm going to show you this project that we did for the W Hotels, which was an Alexa proof of concept. So we wanted to explore like how could using a smart like a voice assistant, a smart speaker, how could that help the guests in their room? What kind of stuff would they ask it, and how could that benefit them, and what would they want to do with it? And we created this fun instance of this fun collateral that the guests could ask, like, what are fun things to do in the area, and where can I go to get a drink, and where should I go to eat? And then they could ask Alexa, and it would give them these custom responses that were really kind of like local to the area, and also would call out some of the W personality. So I'll give you an example of that right now. Let's see. There we go. Where are you, iTunes? Okay. So here's one that I'll play for you guys. Alexa, ask the W about live music.
Would you like me to sing for you? Ha ha. Not happening. You can rock out to Live Austin Blues at Antone's, or see Boys and Continental Club nightly. Austin is the live music capital of the world. Duh. On Thursdays at the Wet Deck, there's a band poolside. It's cool. Do you want the concierge to call you to find out who is playing?
No. So as you heard in that, I asked, where can I go to hear music? And it said, here's some places you can go, but also you can check out the bands that we have here in-house. And then there was also a call to the concierge. It's like, hey, do you want the concierge to call you and give you more information? to never feel like we're pulling our or we're not pulling our guests away from associates and trying to just like have them interact with technology. We want them to feel that human connection with the associates on property. I'm going to play one more quick one.
Alexa, ask the W about cocktails.
You are so much more fun than the last person who stayed in this room. The best places are a little secret and harder to find, but lucky for you I am here. Head downstairs to the secret bar where there are DJs spinning most nights of the week. A few blocks away is Garage Bar, a small retro-inspired bar tucked into a parking garage. You want to get the Indian paintbrush, even if you're not a vodka fan. Trust me. Do you want the concierge to call you to help you grab a ride?
No.
So I knew they were asking about cocktails, which was a good prompt, a good time to ask them if they wanted a ride. So these ones that we did, I'm going to show you some of the results. That the guests really liked this. They said out of a value on their stay, it was a 4 out of 5, and they were interacting with it multiple times a day. And so this was a success, and it's actually been rolled out into pilot. Actually, as of just a week ago, we're in 10 hotels continuing this test with Alexa, which is pretty awesome. Here's an image of the bottler. Here's some of the ways that people were using it, mostly for requesting items. We had a really high engagement rate. We had 60% of our guests who responded to the text that they got. People said things like, I liked it. I liked to text bottler when I had a need. It worked great. I loved it. I asked for towels and I got them quick. I got really quick answers. If you compare it to our mobile app, which relies on an associate, the average response time at a full service property is 5 minutes. At the select service properties, it's much worse. It's like 70 minutes. So being able to get those answers to our guests really, really fast proved to be a big value. So, yes.
With the Alexa example, were you able to send, there was a lot in her response. Can you send a response to either the Alexa app or to the Marriott app?
Not yet. We see, that's a great question, thanks Steve. We see a lot, like one of our big focuses is how do we put this all together and tie the experience to multiple input points. So if you ask a question, could you see like a map of how to get to that restaurant and a menu on the TV? And then could you get like the location pushed to your phone? And then could you have, Alexa, give you a sound clip from the chef that talks about their special? So we definitely want to go there. We didn't do that for our POCs, but there's a lot of opportunity to innovate there. It's a good question. So the one thing I want to say is like, okay, yeah, we did. I showed you a couple of these like AI things that we've done, but really these are in the very, very beginning or like immature stages of what AI is. And like the stuff that as you scoot along this and get more mature is that things get a lot more complicated and take like more than like, hey, okay, let's stand up this POC for a couple of weeks. And I think those are the things that are really going to impact, have the monumental kind of like Titanic shift of impact. And here's just like a really, I don't expect anyone to read all this, but here's some of the ideas that we have around like, here all around the customer journey. There's tons of things that we could do that could be impacted by AI that could really make our journey better all the way around. Okay, so for whatever, I don't know why I'm so excited about this part, but this is like my favorite part of this whole thing is when we talk about some of the dangers in AI. So I'm going to talk about a couple examples. Have you guys seen this Fantasia clip? Does anyone remember this? Where Mickey has a great idea and he like gets the broom to start like cleaning and mopping, and then what happens? It duplicates itself, and then what? Now, are the brooms evil in and of themselves? No. What are they trying to do? They're trying to do exactly what they were told to do, right? Like they're trying to fulfill their purpose, which was to clean. But what happens in the process? They're like stomping all over Mickey, and he can't control them. It basically gets out of control. So the thing that I like, this is actually like an absolute perfect analogy for AI, is that AI is really, really, really specific. It's like I can only do exactly what you've told me to do, and I can't make a judgment call. And so in the case of Fantasia with the enchanted brooms, is that the instructions that they were given basically when Mickey enchanted them was like to go and clean. And he thought, oh, that should work great. I'm going to give this broom and then it's going to go and start cleaning. But as it got more powerful and like duplicated itself, it was like, well, I don't care if you're in my way. I'll step all over your back so I can get this room as clean as possible. And really, like, that's where the dangers of AI really come in, is that it can't ever make that judgment call. It can only know like what it's been told to do. And there's a couple of really interesting, so here's 2 examples of that, and we'll go in a couple more. But there was a situation in Uber where there was a hostage crisis, where there were like, people were dying and they were like hostages at gunpoint, and people were like, I gotta get the heck out of here. So they're calling for Uber, and Uber sees this huge spike in people like wanting to move out of their area. And so what do? They're like, hey, it's a demand surge, so I'm gonna jack up the prices. So now people are like, like screaming at Uber, like, I cannot believe that you would jack up the prices in this time of need. This is a terrible thing for you to do. And Uber's like for me, I mean, maybe because of my background, I'm like, oh, I don't blame Uber at all. Like, they're just, like, they just hadn't thought to program that into their software. So I don't blame them, but other people obviously did blame them. So another like kind of classic computer science example that we talk about when we talk about the downsides of AI is the paperclip problem. So if you may hear this, but basically if you find this machine or robot and you say, okay, you have a really important task. Your task is to make sure that we don't run out of paper clips. And paper clips are essential to our office. We've always got paper that it's loose, and we've got to keep them together. So it's really important for you to keep our paper clip supply, full. And if that kind of narrow instructions is all that you give your paper clip responsibility robot, and if you give them, especially if you give them the more power and more access to things, it may come to conclusions like, okay, well, what makes the paperclip supply drop low? Well, it's these people. So if we lock people out of the building, then the paper supply will always stay high, right? And then it's like, okay, how else can I make sure that we never run out of paper clips? Well, I can use the money. Where can I pull money from? Well, I can pull it from people's salary. Well, we don't need to pay people, right? So I could fire all the people and use that money to buy paper clips. And then if you like really take it to the extreme, then it's like, killing people to use their, resources to make more paper clips or whatever it is. But basically, the more power you give AI and the less kind of like less kind of logic you program into it, the worst kind of possible scenarios that you can end up in. And this is really what nightmare I fall asleep with every night, is the paperclip problem. I just read this book that I thought was really fascinating called Weapons of Math Destruction. Has anyone read this one or heard about this book? So other than having a great title, the kind of the gist of this book is that AI is awesome and people are using it and it's in all sorts of different industries, but there's certain things that happen and are happening right now that the author called a WMD or Weapon of Math Destruction that have really negative results, completely unintentional from the people who are programming or implementing it. So the 3 kind of criteria that the author mentions for creating a WMD is that if it's opaque or you can't see like what the conclusions that the software is making, its scale, it affects a lot of people, and then the effects are negative. So let me give you a couple of examples. So the first one, or the example that the book gave, was you had the mayor of DC who looked at, poor performance on standardized testing, and the mayor thought, well, if we're getting poor test results, what could be the cause? Well, maybe the cause is the teachers, right? So poor teachers lead to the students not learning. That, let's see how we can improve that. Let's see how we can use AI to increase the teachers' performance and behavior and to weed out the bad teachers. Okay, well, how can we weed out the bad teachers? Oh, well, that's easy. We just administer tests to the students, and the students that do poorly, from year over year, if a student drops and then like maybe a whole class drops, that's a pretty good signal that that teacher's a poor teacher, right? So let's get rid of those poor teachers. So that was the intention. Anyone see any potential problems with this? So there was a lot of problems with this. One of them was that teachers knew, like, okay, how my students do on this test will come out in this impact score that I have. And so if I'm a teacher and I don't want to get canned, what can I do to make sure my score doesn't go down? So some of the teachers were cheating. They were helping their students get artificially high grades. So what happened to the teacher the following year? So now the grades have dropped for those students, and teachers were getting cans that actually were like good students. The other thing is like even just like one grade to the next, a sample size of 20 students in your class is not a statistically significant sample size. And if you have a couple students, good students move out, and a couple good poor students move in, that's really not a reflection of the teacher. It could be a reflection of many other environmental variables. But the problem is like this was actually implemented, and many like probably really good teachers, probably some bad ones, but many good teachers were fired because of this. So let's look at the flip side, and let's talk about an example that could have been a WMD, but actually got flipped around and was something kind of positive. So this example came from Xerox, and what they were doing is they were like, okay, we have like, I think it was 40,000 employees. They're like, we need employees that are not going to churn, right? Churn is really expensive. We want employees that'll stick around. And so they're like, how could we analyze our people that are applying and look at what are those attributes that lead to longevity? And then maybe that'll affect our hiring decisions so that we'll hire people that will stay around and have like strong indicators that they're going to be good performers. And so what they looked at is they were like, hey, personality was a big indicator. Like their location where they lived was actually a big indicator. The people who had really killer commutes were people who were likely to churn because everyone hates sitting in traffic, and it makes a job worse when you're like stuck in your car. And they thought, okay, great, well, that's a really strong indicator. Well, we should use that in kind of like weeding people out and not hiring these people that they have a really long commute. But what they found was that the people that had the longest commutes were coming from particular neighborhoods that were lower income. And they said, well, this seemed really fair that we are weeding people out based on their income level. And they said, no, that's not right, and we shouldn't do that. We shouldn't prejudice people based on the neighborhood that they're from, especially if it ties to their income level. And so this was like the really kind of the key learning from this book was if you just look at efficiency, then a lot of times you're going to sacrifice other things like impartiality and will introduce bias into the model. And so you have to sacrifice, many times you have to sacrifice that efficiency in order to adjust for fairness or keep the fairness in the model. The other thing that I was going to say is that there's so many opportunities that we have to make the world a better place. And then there's so many opportunities that we have if we don't pay attention can open up kind of like the gap, the gap in the United States and the income gap and racial gap. And when things are programmed biased by white male programmers who are in their like mid-20s, who are biased without really ever intending to be biased, and they're using data that's biased based on like years of collecting that data, then those impacts can be kind of, they're black boxed and they're opaque to the people who are often receiving the poor results from those. So there's a lot of thought that needs to be put into this when we go and implement these systems. So the last part that I'm going to touch on before we open this up to Q&A is like a lot of people talk about AI is going to replace my job and what jobs are safe and what jobs are at risk. And so kind of what the industry is saying is that there are absolutely jobs that are going to be replaced. And in the long term, we're going to be way better off for it. But in the short term, the potential is that the impact to society could actually be worse than the other shifts we've had. So like if you go back many years, before some of the tractors and heavy farming equipment was introduced, most people were farmers, and that was what they had to do is to feed them and their family and the people around them. And when they introduced tractors, it was like, oh no, what are we going to do now if the tractors are taking over my job? Well, society is much better now that we're not all farmers, right? So there is a point at which we get to where we're like, hey, this is significantly better because we're able to focus our time on things that humans are uniquely good at. But there is a risk, and there is a chance that there's going to be a lot of people that for whom the transition is really rough. So here's kind of like an idea of how fast these jobs will be impacted. So you're looking at 2016, we're already like passing like video games like Angry Birds and like chess and poker, and like we're already starting to see like machines that are doing laundry. So if your job, anyone in this room a laundry folder? Okay, good. Your job's at risk pretty soon. Translating speech, assembling Legos, and you start getting to like, now we're getting to like more creative stuff, retail. Now, a New York Times bestseller, this is kind of interesting. This is in like 2040. Perform surgery, 2050s, research math, all human tasks. Like that one. So we have at least until 2060 or so before computers will be able to do all human tasks. All right, so we have plenty of time to enjoy it while it lasts, right? So anything that's really repetitive, those jobs are at high risk. Low creativity, anything that can be judged. I've heard one statistic that said anything that can be judged in efficiency, if your job can be judged solely in efficiency, then it's like prime for replacement. But if it's creative, if your job involves like something that's unique and creative, then you're probably safer. So things like an artist, a scientist, or developing new business strategy, or clergy. I thought that was an interesting one when I was researching. If you're working as a clergyman, you're in good shape. So that kind of wraps up my material. Kind of like in general, what I would say is if this is all interesting to you, is to continue to research it because it's changing every day. And there's lots of impacts, and pretty much everyone in this room, there's probably something that could impact in your area. And if it's something that you're really interested in, there's always opportunities for like really great classes like on Udemy and Pluralsight that you can learn ways to work in artificial intelligence and stuff that you could bring back into your job. And there's also like really, really, really great careers out there in artificial intelligence. And I am always kicking myself that wasn't like what I studied in school, because I'm sure that I could be, working at Google and making lots and lots of money. Not that my job's bad, but there's always Google. So with that, do you guys have any questions?
So
yeah.
The examples you gave that Marriott had worked on were very customer focused.
Yes.
Is there anything else going on? Like you mentioned some examples there in HR or revenue side of things.
Yeah, so we have a lot of logic in our pricing and our pricing algorithms. I guess that is kind of customer focused, but it's like not relying on associates that set all the prices, that look at seasonality and look at our competitors and look at occupancy that are really, really advanced in intelligence systems. So that's a big one I can think of off the top of my head. Yeah. Great question. So the AI part is the facial recognition. So when you basically take a picture to train the computer to say, hey, this is me, or like it can come from your ID, it can come from whatever, and then the AI has to say, okay, I can pick out the features of this person, the eyes, the nose, the mouth, and I can put those together as to kind of like a fingerprint of this person. And that's one of the kind of like one of the bigger areas. Vision in general is like one of the major disciplines within AI, and then facial recognition is a subset of that. Good question. Any other questions? Yes.
Is there any work going on in terms of keyless entry by using biometrics?
That is a good question. So I don't know of any on biometrics, but what I've always found really, really interesting, and I'll talk to you about two different ways that I think we could accomplish it. So putting a camera on a door, like out-facing, I think would be worrisome in a hotel. Anytime we're talking about cameras in and around rooms, I think would be worrisome. But there's two really fascinating ways that I think we could approach that. The first one is gait recognition. So gait, as in the way you walk, is something that's very, very unique to individuals. And it's very hard to copy or replicate. It's even harder than faces. And so if there was a way that we could, I guess you kind of still need a camera to recognize gait. But if it wasn't recording anything, there wasn't like an image stream going away, that would be an interesting way. The second one that I heard of is like from knees down recognition. So if it was just like your footwear and like the size of your feet and your pants or whatever combination, that could actually be used to identify a person. And there's no like real PII with people's feet for the most part, I don't think. So great question. I would love to see us get there. I don't know of anything right now. Yeah.
So you said you're using AI for kind of revenue management or on the sales side. Is Marriott looking at it on the expense side, kind of predictive indicators for staffing or labor models?
For staffing or labor models, not that I know of, but I'm not in that area, so it's possible. Does anyone in the room know? But I can tell you one of the areas that I wish had AI that I feel like screaming every time I have to fill out my expense reports is when I go into Concur. And I have to tell Concur every single time that, you know, this restaurant was an individual meal, and I have to put in a business purpose, and I always just say an individual meal, duh. It makes me so angry. And I think about how many times that's replicated about, like just across Marriott, how many people are wasting their lives filling out expense reports. Like steam comes out my ears. Every time I finish submitting an expense report, it asks for like Concur feedback, and I write like a really long paragraph. So I hope that they read one of those. And let me say one other thing. Sorry, that one thing that I would love to do. That to be totally honest, if Microsoft came to me today and said, Bryce, you know, you're amazing and we love you and we think you're great and we saw, you know, that AI presentation that you gave back at Innovation Days, if they said, I need you to completely revamp email, oh my goodness, that would be my dream job. I think there's so much space for improving how we interact with email. In like, how do you aggregate it? How do you prioritize it? How do you get rid of like, there's a rule set for me of emails that come in that I could mark as spam that I do many, many times a day. If it's a company I've never heard from, and then someone says, hey, I just need a minute of your time, and will you listen to my sales pitch? And I have to do this every day. I have like 10 emails that I mark as spam and block the sender. And anyway, there are so many ways that email is ripe for disruption with AI. So don't tell my boss I said that. She walked out, so we're safe. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you guys very much for attending.